Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'm going to have to discuss the massive political cock-ups that Rishi Sunak has made in this week alone. Consider just how awful his closest advisors must be, and wonder if out of sheer desperation, the Prime Minister is going to be getting in touch with me soon for some advice. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, when I say Sunak may actually come to me for advice, I may only be half joking. The cock-ups this week alone. And this week wasn't even particularly unusual when you consider how his premiership's gone so far. He's better than Liz Truss's. That's not a high bar. And it sort of demonstrates to me that Sunak just doesn't have a decent team of political advisors. Like, you can understand one cock-up. Every now and then you can understand a cock-up. You know, outside of the control of his main advisor. You can imagine the Malcolm Tucker type character in the background, you know, banging their head against a wall. But then what would happen is afterwards, they'd sit the Prime Minister down, tell him why it was a bloody stupid thing to do, discuss how to avoid getting egg on their face in the future. But this isn't happening. Cock-up after cock-up. He messes up using a credit card to pay for petrol. His initial speech on becoming Prime Minister sounds like the strangled torture of a shy 14-year-old having to make a presentation in front of thousands for the first time. Gets his arse handed to him each week in PMQs. He's in so much trouble that he avoids leaving the country for international summits, meaning that global Britain is missing out on its voice in the globe. And now he's been fined by the police for breaking the law. Again. And unlike with Partygate, people will say, oh, why didn't Labour make a lot of, about Rishi Sunak's fine from Partygate? They'll just see that as Boris Johnson was responsible. He was told to go there. He just happened to be there, not necessarily his fault. And it's not like he's implicated any of the wider parties at Downing Street. He just happened to be there. But no, this one, the seatbelt gate, if you want to call it that, entirely on him. I mean, I spoke about it yesterday and I was a bit too cynical to really believe he would be fined, even though it was very, very clear cut. You know, my apologies to Lancashire Police. They have shown they're not as bent as the Met. So now it is front page news. How could it not be? And this is such bad news for the Tories. I'll tell you how bad it is for the Tories, right? The Daily Express had no choice but to print a front page headline about the death of high street banks. Now, there's a story from the emergency box if ever I saw it, because this hasn't been news for years. And the reason it's bad is because Boris Johnson's downfall was essentially setting himself and his friends above the rules. Oh, the rules are for the little people, the peasants. And in a way, being fined is actually probably less politically harmful than getting away with it. But it still shows the attitude of thinking he's special. What were his advisors thinking? At least one of them must have been in that car when he was pulling that stunt. They may even have suggested it because it was probably the one behind the camera. And here's the thing. Sunak knows that his advisors are rubbish. How can I tell? Well, I saw a BBC article that Sunak's government advisors have been told to come up with one attack line against Labour each week. Now, first of all, if the article is being accurate with its term, and you would think it will be, BBC, government advisors, they're paid out of the public purse, of course, and they're not supposed to engage in party politics. They are therefore, as their name suggests, advising on government matters. So this would be an abuse of public funded resources for a start. See, their job is to advise on government matters. The Tories do get political advisors, and they are paid for from the taxpayer money as well. So we pay for their political advisors, their spin doctors it used to be called, and they are allowed to do this sort of thing. They are allowed to come up with attack lines for Labour, but not government advisors. So telling government advisors to come up with lines to attack Labour is surely a frank admission from Sunak that his own political advisors are hopeless. And yes, they are. They're basically as useless as Sunak himself. Just look at this week, shall we? First, he gets stitched up by Starmer over ambulance wait times. Sunak must know that his piss-poor defence blaming the strikes is not going to wash when ambulance wait times are still high after the strikes are over. And how do I know that they'll still be high after the strikes are over? Because they were high before the strikes started. The bottom line is that come the general election, ambulance wait times will be high and there won't be any strikes on. Sunak needed a defence or a policy that would protect him during the election. In a way, it doesn't matter if the public are not happy with things as they are now. What really matters is the election. But he had nothing. His expensive advisors had nothing. Next was his questionable travel methods, taking a private jet for short hops around the north of England, which for some reason, why do Southerners in the press keep calling it Northern England? North of England. When it would be quicker by train. You know, the optic on this are bad. There are all sorts of reasons why this looks bad. And advisors with even half their money should see that. First, avoiding the use of a train in favour of a private jet. That implies he's trying to avoid meeting the public. Now, when a Prime Minister's not particularly popular, you immediately go to, oh, you're trying to avoid bumping into the public then. That's not a good look if anyone uses that angle in reporting it. Second, it's another example of being seen to be used the more expensive option during a cost of living crisis where the government are saying we need to tighten our belts. Third, of course, the environmental cost of using this method. If he'd have booked a train, there's no extra. It's not just that a jet has a higher carbon footprint than a train. There wouldn't need to be an extra train. You know, there's so many issues that ordinary voters could have with this. Don't get me wrong, there are times when it will be appropriate to travel, even around Britain, on a private aircraft. Not really so much for government business, though. You know, you could then think, so if government advisors are now having to help the Tories out with political strategy, that means they're not doing their job advising on how to manage the various problems that the country seems to have developed since the Conservatives took over. So he's taking them off the job of actually managing government. But you can also see the utter desperation. Tory ministers have run out of road. Their political advisors, usually known as special advisors or SPADs to hide the fact that we pay for party political shenanigans, are clearly turning up blanks. So now they go to the government advisors. They'll be asking the Downing Street police officers for ideas next. For example, during an election campaign, political leaders, not least the Prime Minister, they'll have a very packed schedule. They'll be visiting 3 or 4 different places a day. In fact, the next general election may well include more than the usual number of marginal constituencies. Oh, it's going to be breakneck there. They're touring around the country. So that means Sunak, Starmer, Davey and others, they'll need to be hopping around all over the place. They'll be straight into a place, do their thing, out again. They need to get somewhere else. Okay? So for that, I would say private aircraft, yeah, that's going to be used. But whereas Starmer and Davey, when they're tackled about it, can blame the shocking state of ground-based transport in the UK and use the opportunity to discuss their plans for improvements, Sunak will have more difficulty. He tries blaming, that's because the rail's rubbish, all the trains are cancelled all the time, and his advisors will be looking at him going, no. Actually, I don't think they will be. They're actually that useless. You know, but although I wouldn't criticise it during an election campaign and maybe certain other situations, I am going to this week. He hasn't needed to visit lots and lots of parts of the country each single day this week. He wanted to go out to promote himself filling up the Tory trough with public money. He could have done that quite easily by train. Or could he? Is this maybe where there is a problem? Because this is what you have to ask yourself. So obviously Sunak, you know, arranges a publicity stunt. He has to turn up to it. Very embarrassing, draw a lot of attention if he didn't turn up to it because the train wasn't there. So maybe he's used the private jet. He's saying it's the most efficient way. Maybe he sort of means it. Maybe what he actually means is, yeah, in theory there's a train there, but, you know, knowing our train operators, they'll cancel it on me and then I'm stuck. You know, so, because that's what you have to ask yourself. Why did he need to be up in the air when it's quicker to go by train, if the train's running? You know, you can get to different publicity sites by train in a day, no problem, especially when it's all in the same part of the country. And it would be quicker, as I say. I mean, a jet obviously is quicker than a train once in motion. But when you're using a plane, there's an awful lot of faff before and after the jet actually moves anywhere, which makes the overall journey time longer than on a train. Unless, of course, there is no train because your precious train operators have cancelled it. And why this is serious for the Tories. So you look at the various escapades just this week. And let's say you're a Tory MP and you're trying to look on the bright side, you're trying to G yourself up. So you say, well, you know, not that many people watch PMQs. And it's not like Sunak said something so stupid it got splashed all over the media. So yeah, that was okay. You can say, well, you know, a lot of voters aren't really going to care about the private jet either. Fine. You can say that a lot of voters aren't going to care about the fine for the seatbelt. Okay. But the thing is, some voters will watch PMQs and look at Sunak and go, no. Some of them will care about the inappropriate use of the jet. Some of them will care that he's broken the law. Again. You know, every time you have a PR cock-up, there will be a group of voters whose opinion of you nosedives as a result of it. It may be a very small group of voters, but the issue matters to them. So each cock-up has the potential to weaken your chances in the election. You know, you get away with a few. Everyone has a few. A small group of voters doesn't matter. But if you've got 3 or 4 PR cock-ups a week, you're creating a lot of chances to put voters off. And once people lose respect for a political leader, or indeed anyone, it's very difficult to get it back. And it's not like Sunak is even doing much to get it back. You know, the announcement of pork barrel funding this week, that has pissed off more people than it's pleased. Because it's clearly not been allocated according to need. It hasn't even been allocated according to political strategy. Because everyone with a stronger claim to levelling up, levelling up was always supposed to be about the left behind areas catching up to the affluent areas. That's what it was about. Giving levelling up money to already affluent areas when there's deprived areas not getting it, that's just going to make them more determined to get a better government. What was it? I think £19 million he gave to his own constituency. What was the point of that? It's a very wealthy constituency. They're voting Tory at the next election anyway. Even with the polls as they are now, the Tories are winning Richmond handsomely. So by awarding the so-called levelling up money to his own backyard, poor little rich boy is just thumbing his nose at the vast majority of the red wall that will get nothing. And even the parts of the red wall that have got something, like Lee Anderson's constituency, or have been promised something, they're not going to see much of that. So you look at these daily disasters and you think, well, you know, no wonder Sunak is now telling government advisors who are supposed to be engaged in non-political work, he's asking them now to help him campaign against Labour. He's all out of ideas. His cabinet are all out of ideas. His political advisors are all out of ideas. So maybe he will get desperate enough to give me a call before long. I've got some advice for him. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.